Hey, greetings! Welcome back to Sean's Irish Whiskey Shelf, where, as you can see, we're in the green, so must be St. Patrick's Day, right? And what better way to celebrate St. Patrick's Day than to talk about a type of Irish whiskey that is uniquely and really highlights what Irish whiskey is all about, and that would be single pot still. You know, we've talked about single malt, and we've talked about single grain, and the last single that we need to talk about is single pot still. Now, why do I say that this is arguably the most traditional form of Irish whiskey? Well, it's because if you recall from one of my other videos, I believe it was the video on single malt, back in the 1700s, I believe it was 1752, somewhere around there, the King of England decided that distillers who were using malted barley were making lots of money. And it was very popular, that malted barley. So, you know, when something's going good, you gotta tax it, right? And that's what the king did. He decided to put a tax on malted barley. Well, the Irish distillers decided that they would, to save a little bit of money and not have to pay so much in taxes, they would cut back on how much of that malted barley they used and instead mix it with alcohol that was made from unmalted barley. So now you had the mix of malted and unmalted together. And that's what single pot still is to this day. Now, remember, single means from one distillery. All of the distillate comes from one distillery. So that's all that you got to worry about with single. Pot still whiskey, though, it means that your whiskey is going to have at least 30% malted barley and at least 30% unmalted barley. And you can have up to 5% other grains if you want. Okay, you could do a straight 50-50 of malted and unmalted and call it a day. And, you know, some of these are just a straight 50-50. So it was all because of the King of England saying that malted barley was going to be taxed, that the Irish distilleries started taking the malted barley, mixing it with the unmalted barley, and wow, here we have Irish whiskey. That is the definition of Irish whiskey is sitting right here, single pot still. So, one of the things though that is interesting to me is that there's not a lot, at least what I've seen in my little bit of collecting, not a lot of single pot still out there. What you see in front of you, other than the fact that all of the Redbreast bottles I have are single pot still, all of the spots that I have are single pot still, but that leaves you with, you know, the Powers, the Drumshanbo, and the Busker. That's it. All of the other bottles that are back here are not single pot still. They are a blend, usually, you know, blended with some single malt or single malt and single grain. But there's just not a lot of pure single pot still out there. It is starting to make a bit of a comeback, I've read. So, you know, maybe we'll see some more offerings in the future as we go along. But for tonight's video, or today's video, whenever you happen to watch this, we're going to talk about these 5. And I'm going to state right off the bat that it may not be a very fair comparison because you've got the Busker, which has no age statement, but you can expect it to be around 3 to 4 years aged. Then you move to the Drumshanbo, about 5 years. They say it's at least 5 years that this has been aging. Then we move to the Green Spot. All they'll say about Green Spot is 7 to 10 years. That's all you're going to find. This Powers John's Lane and this Redbreast are both 12 years. So we're going up in age here, which typically gives you a more mellow taste, better complexity in your Irish whiskey. So we're going to find out exactly how that lands here with our taste tests. So starting right off the bat, we have the Busker. This is the Busker single pot still. We have 88.6 proof in this, and this is one of four blends or four types of Irish whiskey that the Busker puts out. We've already looked at the single malt and the single grain, and then of course they have their green label, which is a blend of all three. So all of these, by the way, claim to be finished in some combination of bourbon and sherry casks. So, you know, the real trick is going to be how long do they allow it to mature and to finish in those casks, because that maturing process, you get kind of the char out of, or a bourbony, charry taste out of bourbon casks, and of course you're going to get a little bit more of a sweet taste out of the Oloroso sherry casks. So that, I think, is really where you're going to find the difference in how these whiskeys are distilled and finished. So Busker, about 3 years of aging, and like we said, bourbon and sherry casks. So let's take a little sip of the Busker single pot still. Okay. So right off the bat, I'm going to say that that's not the smoothest drop of Irish whiskey. Again, it's only aged for about 3 years, so it hasn't had a lot of time to mature and get all those complexities that you might find in these other ones. Maybe just a wee bit harsh on the palate, but it's a single pot still. And I really think that as I go along my course of collecting and sampling Irish whiskey, I still think single pot still might be my favorite. So, I mean, based on that, there's nothing wrong with the Busker. It's just a little bit on the lower end, and it's also on the lower end of price. You should be able to pick this bottle up for around $30 to $40. So, good entry level single pot still Irish whiskey. I think the mash bill on this, near as I could tell, it's a straight 50-50. 50 malted barley, 50 unmalted barley. Also, real quick, this is the Royal Oak Distillery in Ireland. That's who puts this together. All right, let's move up to County Leitrim, where the Shed Distillery is located, and you have a bottle of single pot still here called Drumshanbo. Now, the Shed Distillery is pretty new on the scene. It has not been around for a very long time. It's only been here for a couple of years. By opening this distillery, they are bringing Irish whiskey production back to that area where it has been absent for 105 years. So, you know, they're really proud of the fact that once again, an Irish whiskey distillery is operating in that area. And Drumshanbo might be one that, you know, you might not have heard of. I had never heard of it. I had a friend tell me, you know, man, you got to try this Drumshanbo. And I said, what was that? Drumshanbo? Never heard of it. Boy, let me tell you what, you need to find some and try it. We did the Drumshanbo single malt, the 2022 Galanta back there, and the single pot still is equally as good. So, once again, just like all the other ones, Kentucky bourbon and Oloroso sherry casks. The interesting thing about this one, though, while we have to have that malted and unmalted barley, they also mix in some Irish Barra oats. So they take advantage of the fact that they can put up to 5% of another type of grain. And in this case, they mix in some Irish Barra oats. The only one of these samplers here, or these bottles, they're not really samplers, only one of these bottles that does that. So anyway, let's take a drop of Drumshanbo here and see what we got. You can already smell the malted barley. It's already got that kind of unique or telltale nose to it. Right. So, as I figured, because it's about 4 to 7 years older than the Busker, it's going to be a little smoother. You are still going to have that nice single pot still pop, but this has a little bit more of that malted barley feel and taste to it. So if you like that palate, man, you're going to love Drumshanbo. I'm telling you, that is a really, really fine whiskey. The proof on this, we've got it's 43% alcohol, so it's going to be 86% proof. Excuse me, 86 proof, not 86%. Bit too much St. Patrick's Day already, right? 86 proof, and I really do like Drumshanbo. A little heavy on the malted barley for my palate, but boy, I can find no reason why I wouldn't drink it. All right, quick reminder, if you like my videos, please take a second or two to go down and click the thumbs up. That's really simple, and it means a lot to me. And if you want to know when I release new videos, hey, subscribe. You know, it's also very easy to do. You click the little bell icon and now you're subscribed, and you'll know exactly when I release a new video. Again, I try to do about one a week. All right, now these next three are from the powerhouse distillery, Middleton. Middleton Distillery does the Spots, they do the Powers, they do Redbreast, they do Jameson, they do Method and Madness. I'm probably leaving one or two out. They are a very big, very well-known distillery. So let's start with Green Spot. This bottle of Green Spot, you're looking at 80 proof, so it's a little bit less powerful alcohol-wise than these two. Really, it's a good whiskey, as I recall. I like all the Spots. Come on, anything out of the Middleton Distillery is going to be a good whiskey. So, Green Spot, again, bourbon and sherry casks, near as I can tell. It is a 50-50 mix of malted and unmalted. Again, it's going to be how they finish it. How long do they finish it in the bourbon casks? How long do they finish it in the sherry casks? That's really where you're going to get that difference in taste. So let's give it a try. See what we got. All right, Green Spot is it's as good as I remember. So far, of the first three, this really is right here where I go with single pot still whiskey. Very tiny little bit of the malted barley taste, has that nice that nice single pot. I call it a single pot pop. You know you're drinking Irish whiskey when you have that, and that's a fabulous, fabulous drink of Irish whiskey. And because it's only 80 proof, a little bit less of the alcohol burn. Okay, you're not at the 86 proof like these guys were. Matured a little longer, you know, 7 to 10 years. You're letting that alcohol mature a little bit and mellow out. So, yeah, that's a good Irish whiskey. I think that's one that you would really enjoy if you want to try some single pot still. It's not going to be as inexpensive as the Busker, but it should be right about on par with the Drumshanbo. All right, Powers John's Lane. Now, John's Lane, let me tell you why this is called John's Lane. Back in, what was it, about 1822, there was a little distillery up near Dublin, just right outside of Dublin. Only had 3 pot stills in it, and John Powers bought that distillery. And that distillery then was located on John's Lane. This particular whiskey is named in honor of that small distillery that John Powers bought back in the early 1800s. So that's why it's called John's Lane. Again, you gotta figure it's going to be around 50-50. One of the things that Middleton does not release about the Powers John's Lane is the mash bill. In fact, I read on more, researching this, I read on more than one site that they keep the exact mash bill secret for this one. So, that's your guess is as good as mine. They do mention, though, that like the others in the bourbon and sherry casks, but mostly for this one, it spends a lot longer in the bourbon than in the sherry casks, and more of it in the bourbon than the sherry casks. So they will at least say that. Again, 12 years old, so we're getting up there now, and this is 92 proof. So now we're starting to get into some strong whiskey. So let's see how our Powers John's Lane goes. That is not bad at all. I get more of the alcohol burn in that. I mean, you're going to get more of the alcohol burn in that because it is the 92 proof. Certainly more than 80. But putting that aside for a minute, I like that. Again, like the green spot, it doesn't have a lot of that malted barley undertone to it. Not only that, but you can start to taste a little bit of the influence that it has, having been matured in ex-bourbon casks. That's really tough, and I expected it to be tough. I expected any 3 of these from Middleton to really shine. And so far they have. So let's go to Redbreast 12. Now, Redbreast. Everybody knows who Redbreast is, right? Unless you've been living under a rock, you know about Redbreast. You know that they are one of the yardsticks that you measure Irish whiskey by. This particular bottle, aged 12 years, it says right on the label. And this is 80 proof, so it's like the green spot, only 80 proof. I can tell just by looking at it, at the color of the whiskey, it is definitely a deeper gold, amber gold color than any of the others. Not by much, but a little bit. Yeah, let's just stop yapping and try some. It's a fine drop of whiskey, folks. Can't lie about that. That's a fine drop of whiskey. I think that this is going to bring out a little bit more, just a little bit more of that malted barley taste and feel to it, but that's not a bad thing. And the fact that it's only 80 proof means you're not going to get as much of the alcohol burn like you would in the Powers at 92 proof. So while these three have to be the top of the line of the 5 on the table, followed very closely by the Drumshanbo, right? I got to tell you, there's nothing wrong with Drumshanbo. It's just, I think it is just a tiny bit on the outside looking into these three. I think it's a toss-up between these three. I really don't know what to pick. If you came and held a gun to my head and told me I absolutely had to pick one, maybe the Redbreast, because you can't go wrong. Is it the best bang for your money? Maybe, maybe not. Do you like a strong alcohol, one that really gives you that punch in the mouth, that you know it's there, it's got that strong burn? Then you want the Powers. You want that Powers John's Lane. All right? If you want the smoothness of the Redbreast 12, maybe just a little tiny bit less of that malted barley taste and feel, then perhaps you want the Green Spot. But these three right here, folks, this is single pot still. This is what single pot still is all about. And, you know, of course, today being St. Patrick's Day and everything is green, hey, Green Spot, right? That's a bad joke. No, seriously, it's these three are just fantastic, and you should add them to your shelf. At least try them if you can find them. Find someone willing to give you a drop and see what you think. If you are looking to just get started with single pot still and you don't want to spend a lot of money, go with the Busker. It is not as refined. It is not as complex as the other 4, but it is single pot still, and you will get the essence of what single pot still is. So there you have it, folks. Single pot still whiskey. It's still my favorite. It really is. I think I like maybe single malt a little bit as a second place. Single grain really didn't do much for me when we tried it. Then of course you got blends. We're gonna do blends in a future video, and the majority of what's on the shelf behind me are blends. So, you know, that is the distilleries mixing a little of this and mixing a little of that. You could make a lot of different tastes out of that, but this is it. This is Irish whiskey. Still my favorite, and I hope it will be yours too. So with that, we're going to wrap up for the evening. I would like to remind you that you can find me on Facebook under Sean's Irish Whiskey Shelf. And if you're on Facebook, you want to find some really knowledgeable people, you want to look for the Irish Whiskey Fans of America. Fantastic, fantastic group of people. They probably have forgotten more about Irish whiskey in there than I'll ever know. So you can't go wrong following them and reading the posts in there. So go out and enjoy some Irish whiskey today. St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. It's all about enjoying some Irish whiskey, but please do so responsibly today more than ever. It's important that you all get to where you're going every time you get in a car today, and I want you to be responsible while you enjoy it. So, because I want you back next time. I want you to comment on my YouTube and my Facebook pages. I love interacting with you folks. So, make sure you're there. I'll be there for you. We'll be back next week. And until we meet again, I want you all to be well and be safe. Sláinte. Bye now.